Fremont County, Colorado. Amidst the hayfields in this sleepy corner of the Southern Rockies stand 14 prisons. Corrections is now one of the fastest-growing industries in the United States. Fear and loathing of violent crime led the American public to demand get-tough policies. Legislators did not let them down. In 15 years, the prison population has almost doubled to more than 1 million. Sentences are getting longer. At least 3 of the men in this film are destined to die in prison. How to warehouse such criminals until that point is a concern of the whole nation. An open population, maximum security prison is dangerous territory for prisoners and guards alike. Prison gangs, sexual predators, drug pushers, and violence create a nightmare for the weak and vulnerable. Inmates outnumber guards by more than 70 to 1. The system is under intense pressure. One solution is to remove the most dangerous prisoners and tame them in high-cost facilities, reforming them until they're ready to re-enter a less expensive prison life. That's the theory behind the so-called Supermax prisons, like the new $66 million federal ADX at Florence, Colorado. Supermax was born here, Alcatraz Island on San Francisco Bay. In 1934, the island's military jail was turned into an escape-proof super prison to hold America's most dangerous criminals. One of those criminals was Willie Radkay. Now 84 years old, in 1942, Willie topped the FBI's 10 most wanted list for bank robbery and kidnapping in states across America.
I was a kid that never should have been born. We had a priest at the Catholic school, St. John the Baptist in Kansas City, Kansas, and he'd say, "You'd steal a penny out of a dead man's eye."
The cocksure young hoodlum was to spend 7 years on the rock. His best friend would be George Machine Gun Kelly.
Alcatraz was a kind of a scary word. No chance there's going to be getting away, because that was a maximum prison at that time. The boat ride was rough, and everybody kept thinking, what's going to happen next? I was barefoot, pair of pants on and a shirt, no underclothes at all. We marched up that cold hill. They were giving out numbers. My number was 666, the sign of Satan. The warden was there. I finally saw Saltwater Johnson after reading so much about him. They said he was quite a man. I looked him over good, but I noticed he gave each and every one of us, a good up and down look. I could see his mind saying, what's this guy think he's going to do here?
With the onset of the liberal 60s, the reforming Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, decided Alcatraz's damp dungeons were too harsh. In 1963, he closed the prison. For more than a decade, America had no Supermax. But during the 70s, prison violence escalated. On one day in 1983, 2 guards were murdered at Marion Federal Penitentiary, Illinois. Marion was locked down. Inmates were permanently confined to their cells. The new Supermax era had begun. Westville Maximum Control Complex, one of 2 Supermaxes in Indiana. Westfield Mcc has been accused in court of abusing prisoners. As a result, its operations are overseen by a federal judge. This is the first time any media has been allowed inside. Here, a man is allowed just 1 hour's solitary recreation a day in a glass-walled rec room. For the other 23 hours, he's locked up alone in his cell. This is the end of the line for prisoners deemed unable to live by the rules. Critics call these prisons control units. The guard-prisoner ratio is more than 1 to 1. The minimum sentence is 2 years. Most inmates serve longer.
Jump, ready for rec? Paul, 102.
You have traffic for 900?
No one comes straight from the streets or from the county jail to MCC to serve their time. They come directly from another institution. Kind of things they're done to get here would be assault, continuous assaults on staff members at other institutions, assaults on other offenders, attempted escapes, sexual contact with other offenders, other staff members, hardcore gang members, heavy gang activities in the other institutions, things of that nature.
Correctional officers feel safe working here. Some female officers say they would not work in an open population prison. But keeping men caged up can never be an easy way to earn a living, and is always controversial.
We don't abuse the offenders. They're human, therefore we treat them as human. We show them the type of respect that they show us. The public think, okay, you are a prison guard, you are there to keep these people away from me. Really, their opinion is we're not much better than them.
When he was just 17 years old, Jay Thompson was sentenced to death for the murder of 72-year-old William Hilborn and his 65-year-old wife, Mary. With an accomplice, Thompson went to the couple's house to steal money to buy drugs. The Hilborns were stabbed 30 to 40 times, but remained alive while the two men searched for money. The judge said there were indications that the Hilborns may have been tortured before they were finally killed. Thompson's death sentence was later set aside on technical grounds, and because of his age when the crime was committed. He's now serving 120 years. His Westville sentence is for another stabbing, this time in prison.
An individual basically tried to intimidate a friend of mine and insulted him essentially, and it escalated into a situation, and in the end, a man was dead.
The other prisoner was stabbed more than 21 times by Thompson and 3 others using a homemade weapon. Jay Thompson knows better than most the confrontational nature of prison life.
There's always predators in prison, those that will steal from you or, try and rob you, sexual assaults, or just really the majority of it's sexual intimidation,
Solitary confinement may neutralize disruptive prisoners, but it can also lead to mental breakdown and even self-mutilation.
The cells are enclosed, so there's no bars actually. Of course, the door is solid steel with a small window, and there's a light on in the cell for 24 hours a day, 7-watt bulb. So you have to either get used to sleeping with something around your head, over your eyes, or just sleep with the light on.
The 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. Federal courts repeatedly question whether conditions in Supermax prisons are unconstitutional.
When they're locked up for 23, sometimes 24 hours of the day, to me, that's their punishment. We're not here to reform them. They did something to get sent here, and part of that punishment is sitting, thinking about what you've done, giving you that time to get in touch with yourself and just think about it. It's not cruel and unusual, you know. They do have contact with the staff members, so it's not like they're locked away and forgotten about.
You ready for outside rec?
They alternate when you come out, so you don't come out the same time every day. You can't set your schedule by that. Essentially, the only activities are basketball. You know, you might bounce the basketball around or shoot it a little bit. They have these steel bicycles that, you know, are really useless, and a tennis ball. So if you're going to really exercise, it comes down to calisthenics, in essence, and or maybe running a small circle a lot.
In their hour of freedom from the confines of their cell, inmates can choose between indoor and outside rec. Today, Thompson has chosen a brief taste of fresh air and a glimpse of sky through steel mesh in outside rec.
Really, nothing changes, and it's just a continuous routine. Come out for recreation for 50 minutes or whatever, and get a 10-minute shower. During that 10-minute shower, you have to, within that period of time, shave, you know, cleanse yourself and so forth, and so you have to learn to get pretty quick about that stuff, and but you do have an awful lot of time in that cell that you have to occupy.
Need you to take your belt off, please.
Money, drugs, and weapons are the hard currency of prison life. Even in a Supermax, every officer is searched before starting work. Frequent cell searches or shakedowns help maintain security, but are deeply resented by inmates.
During a shakedown, we hope to find any contraband that the offender might have or prohibited property, and those items are defined. Contraband is an item that is restricted for the offender to have in his possession, whether that's some type of a weapon or some type of drug paraphernalia or things of that nature. We hope to find those items before the offender gets to use either one of them.
Sometimes they'll keep items off of the trays, food items to say maybe to make hooch or whatever, keep medication that should have been taken, other offenders' magazines or property that they shouldn't have. And I feel it's their way of like taking back some of the control, you know, because virtually there is no control here as far as they are concerned.
In the beginning, we had a few offenders that tried to bring in some type of homemade weapons or whatever, usually in a body cavity of some sort. And we haven't had an incident like that in quite a while. We've taken away all the freedoms that they had while they were incarcerated in an open population setting. We have gone further and taken those freedoms away, the freedoms that allowed those individuals to run with gangs and gave them the opportunity for gang violence or inmate-on-inmate violence, to run drugs inside the institution, to make weapons, to assault staff.
The contrast between Westville MCC with around 100 prisoners and Indiana State Prison with 1,600 could not be more extreme. Now a sergeant at Westville, Todd Kamleiter began his career here in one of the oldest penitentiaries in the United States.
In an open population setting at the prison where I worked, it was usually about 80 to 90 offenders to one officer at any given time. And it was often felt that those offenders could take control of those housing units whenever they wanted to, and which is a scary thought for everybody. I was much more vulnerable working there because of the contact that you have with offenders they're out of their restraints, and if one happens to have a grudge against you, then I was constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering what I was doing there, or what possessed me to work in that type of environment.
Prison's not safe. Guards are there to keep you there. They're not there to protect you per se. I mean, if they see somebody pull a knife out, you can believe they're not going to jump between you and that fellow with the knife. Usually you're going to see the bottom of their feet as they run away, which is understandable, really. Just about everybody has weapons in prison. It doesn't matter how many cell searches, prison searches they have, there's always weapons. And you have to have a weapon because your next enemy's probably going to have a weapon, and if he's got a 2-foot-long knife and you're barehanded, you're going to lose.
The state prison's convict cats have been in these cell houses for longer than any lifer. At least one prisoner has been killed fighting over ownership of a feline. The most a prisoner at Westville can hope for is a few books, a Walkman radio, and after 3 months' good behavior, a TV set which he must buy himself. In 1992, inmates took the prison to federal court claiming physical and mental abuse. As a result, Westville's operations are now overseen by a judge, like prisons in 39 other states. But no judge has yet ruled Supermax prisons illegal.
If I was locked up in my cell 23 hours a day, I don't think I could make it. I really don't know just what would happen. I think I could last it pretty long, but it'd be a hard time to do.
A training exercise in an empty pod. The prisoner is an officer with instructions to play his role to the full.
This extraction team has been assembled to extract offender Lawson from cell B3104.
Offender Lawson, first of all, I'm giving you a direct order to quit hitting on this.
The reason for this action is offender Lawson assaulted staff.
Offender Lawson, what? Is there anything I can help you with?
He then refused orders.
The federal court order on Westville means cell extractions are now rare.
What seems to be the problem?
In the past, it didn't take much to be extracted, but nowadays, there's far more scrutiny on that type of thing, so you have to essentially bring it on yourself, really. That is, they'll give you a couple warnings, come cuff up or whatever, and if you continue to refuse, then they'll put the E-Squad together.
Cell extractions are dangerous and feared by officers and inmates.
The team consists of, number 1 is Officer Fredericks. He'll be in charge of the shield. Number 2 is Officer Gibson. He'll be in charge of the offender's right arm. Number 3 is Officer Taylor. He'll be in charge of the offender's left arm. Number 4, Officer Shivers. He'll be in charge of the offender's right leg. Number 5, Officer Booker. He'll be in charge of the offender's left leg. Nurse Homer has been placed on standby. She will remain in a secured area until needed. Camera operator is Sergeant Burkholder. Please state the date and time it appears on the camera.
Time is 2:33 p.m., June 12, 1995.
We'll proceed to B-Pod.
I ain't hurt nobody. I ain't hurt a soul. You hurt me. I ain't did nothing to nobody. I ain't did nothing to nobody.
Stand him up.
Simulating a real extraction, the whole process is videotaped in case the prisoner sues.
I'll stand up. I'll stand up. I'll stand up. Just help me up. I'll stand up.
Hey, man, they trying to take Rashid down. They trying to take Rashid. I sit down, man. Whoa, stop. Whoa. I ain't did nothing to nobody. I'm just trying to get along with everybody.
95% of all prisoners will one day be free to return to society. How does prison prepare them to be good neighbors? This question is central to the philosophy here at Oak Park Heights in Minnesota. More than half the prisoners here have killed someone. Almost all have committed crimes against the person. This is an earth-sheltered maximum security prison, literally built in a hole in the ground. Many prison insiders consider Oak Park Heights the most secure prison in America.
Since we opened in 1982, we have not had an escape or serious escape attempt. We have had several serious assaults, but have yet to experience our first homicide. We have to recognize that inmates are human beings, just like ourselves, and that they have committed some atrocious felonies. So we think it's a very important philosophical initiative we've taken to allow inmates as much freedom and as many choices as is possible, given that it's a maximum security environment.
With the exception of this place here, I've escaped from every prison I've ever been in my life, and every time I've ever tried to escape, I got away. Unfortunately, every time I got away, I got caught.
In 1976, Robert Bobby Lewis was a marijuana dealer in Florida. Lewis shot a man dead, claiming the gangster had threatened to kill him and members of his family unless he was cut in on the drug money. Sentenced to the electric chair, he escaped from Florida's death row, the only man to do so. Recaptured, his death sentence was later commuted, and Lewis was transferred to Oak Park Heights.
Within the first 24 hours that I went to the prison system, I stabbed 2 people and beat one with a pipe. 2 people tried to rape me. Another person tried to take my shoes and my watch from me. I went to war with them.
Oak Park Heights has created an environment in which life is much less violent than the prisons he's known before.
You had hours. You was lucky if you had a whole day in order to decide whether you could, what you was going to be inside prison, whether you was going to be somebody's boy, whether you was going to be used, abused, traded, whether you'd ever have any money to spend yourself, whether any possession you'd ever own would be yours, or whether you was going to get you a knife, a club, a stick, and start hurting people. Today, there's almost nothing I can't use after 20-something years of prison as a weapon. I can use any kind of chemical compounds to make any kind of poison gases or bombs. I know what kind of plants grow on a prison yard, what their effects are. I can take a newspaper and run it through you. I can make a blowgun, a spear, a hatchet, a hammer. Everything is a weapon. Everything in prison you have to look at is, how can I use this, or how can it be used against me?
We don't have a problem with excessive number of shanks or homemade weapons being carried by inmates here. Every time inmates enter or leave an area, they are pat searched and metal detected. We have very rigid tool accountability for our industry programs. And if a tool is missing, we immediately go into a lockdown status where inmates will be locked down in their rooms for 3 to 4 days while their rooms are completely searched and the living and the work area is searched.
Efficient security systems and highly trained staff who are encouraged to treat inmates with respect keep violence towards officers at a fairly low level. But the architecture exists for the prison to be locked down and turned into a Supermax overnight if necessary. The decision to lodge one of America's most violent federal prisoners here is proof of Oak Park Heights' security. Ron Crowder has killed twice. In 30 years, he has innumerable convictions for violence in prison, or as he describes it, catching a case.
I started doing time in 1957 for breaking into a school, stealing a movie projector. But I really didn't start doing hard time till around 1966. The first institution that they sent me to was Petersburg Reformatory. I made parole. Well, I stayed out about 3 months, and I caught another robbery and manslaughter. It gave me 15 years, and they sent me back to Lewisburg. I caught a case in Lewisburg. They gave me an assault, locked me up in a hole, And they said that I was a management problem, so they sent me to Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. I caught another case down there, so they sent me to Marin. Marin is the last stop. All the bad apples is there, you know what I'm saying? I hit a guy on the yard, and they sent me to the control unit. They gave me 36 months. And then I was out in population about 3 or 4 months, and I caught another case. They gave me 8 years on that, you know.
Crowder is a leader of one of the most violent prison gangs in the federal system, the D.C. Blacks.
The feds gave us that title, the D.C. Blacks, because we was a bunch of black people from out of D.C. that we stuck together. They try to turn it into a gang, but it's not a gang. You know, it's just a bunch of people that came up together out the neighborhoods. We hung together, we looked out for one another, and we didn't go for anything. You know, if you do something to one, you got to do to all. If you would do something to one of us that's in Lewisburg, well, wherever you go, you're gonna get taken care of because you violated, you did something to one of us. And under any means necessary, we would get you.
After the prison slaying of a D.C. Black in 1983, Crowder did exactly that.
Cadillac was a homeboy from the same town I'm from. We came up together, and he had a lot of respect. He was killed by the ABs, which is white supremacist group. He was hit. He was hit 64 times with knives, you know. Killing is one thing, but man, when you grab a man and drag him down the tier so all his people can see that, you know, it was disrespect then. You know, it was disrespect. That was my friend, you know. That was my friend, so I had to do something, you know. I had to do something. I just couldn't ignore that, you know. I couldn't, and I did what I had to do. It cost me my freedom, you know, and I would be in it till I die. And if I had to do it over again, I would, you know.
Ron Crowder is strip-searched in preparation for a visit. A lifetime spent in prison has left him alone in the world. At Oak Park Heights, he began corresponding with a local woman. Ron now considers Mary his common-law wife.
Yeah, I got a wife and 7 daughters that I got a lot of respect for, you know, and they comes up here to see me regular. And like I said, I have a lot of love for them kids, you know, so I'm doing pretty much all right, you know.
Any dentures? Okay. All right. Hands straight up.
How long will you be staying?
Okay, lift your sack. Separate.
Okay, would you go through the metal detector, please?
Okay.
Okay, you have to take your shoes off.
Turn around, lift 1 foot at a time, wiggle the toes. Bend and spread. All right.
And thank you.
Didn't I tell you about talking so much?
Not every inmate appreciates the life at Oak Park Heights.
I was the first person in the Minnesota state to get the new guidelines, which is a 30-year mandatory sentence with the possibility of parole at the end of it, or death.
The half-naked body of a young trainee chef was found dumped on a country road. His throat had been cut. His stomach and back had deep gashes. Of 6 people arrested, Dan Naylor was the only one found guilty of first-degree murder.
Next thing I know, I'm in trial. And next thing I know, the motive went from he stole some earrings, to he was molesting children, to he was a cop, to it was a satanic ritual. Jury heard that satanic stuff, I was fried.
6 years later, Naylor still insists that although he was present, he did not wield the knife.
I ain't the same person I was when I was out there. I ain't the same asshole that I was when I was out there. I don't take the sound of a bird chirping or a dog barking off in the distance for granted anymore. I just can't. I have nothing anymore, so I can't take any little bit for granted. I've got a card that was sent to me in jail from my ex-fiancée, Stacy, that I'll never get rid of. Because I can still smell her on that card. So a lot of people in society will just say, oh, poor person. No, not poor person. I don't want society's pity. I want society to wake up and see what's going on and quit believing this disinformation they keep getting. We don't have it as a resort here. Sure, the building may be new and the cells may be cleaner, but we ain't got it that easy. There's nothing easy about prisons. I know for a fact if I was to be released today back into society and they told me I had to live on the streets and be a bum, I say, when do we leave?
At Oak Park Heights, we have 2 extremes. You've got a choice. You can live in general population, accept a job, and you're going to basically have a lot of freedom within a small space between 7 in the morning and 10 p.m. at night. The other choice, if you don't obey the rules, is we have a very rigid, punitive segregation unit. Here, inmates are only allowed out of the room 1 hour per day and offered very few amenities, very few clothing items, very little reading material, things like that.
Good. Everything quiet? Real quiet.
One key element to our success has been that we keep the difference between general population and segregation extreme. And if you're an inmate that's looking at many, many years of his personal life being spent, and you've made that decision to try to accomplish some constructive goals, the choice is obvious.
Good afternoon, Mr. Crowder. Anything going on?
Oak Park Heights, I mean, it's so kicked back. There's nothing going on here. I mean, it's nothing that you can get into. I've never been in a penitentiary like this before. It's strange for me. I mean, you can go to school, you can lock and unlock your own door when you want to. You're around, what, 52 people every day, so it's just like a close-knit family, you know what I'm saying? You can lay your head down here and go to sleep. You know, you ain't got to worry about getting whacked. This is a nice place where you can retire. I mean, you know, just get away from everything is right here.
Ron Crowder knows that one day he may have to return to the federal system.
Burn itself, you know, it's just like being in the belly of the beast, you know, because that's a pit. It's the snake pit, you know. And if you're strong, you're gonna survive, but if you're weak, you're gonna tear you down. I done seen a lot of good dudes break down under that type of pressure. You know, paranoid, schizophrenic, thinking people is poisoning them, thinking people is plotting against them. If they tell me I had to go back to Marion tomorrow, I mean, Marion is where I got to go back. I'm ready to go. I just had to put that face back on and I'm gone. You know what I'm saying? But unfortunate for me, I won't be going back to Marion. You know, I will be going to Colorado. You know, they done had enough of me in Marion, you know, so My next stop is Colorado. Supermax.
It's known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, the new $66 million federal Supermax at Florence, Colorado, the most feared prison in the United States. One of the first men to be moved here from Marion was Oscar Lopez Rivera.
I have spent 14 years in prison. I was convicted of seditious conspiracy to overthrow the government of the United States in Puerto Rico by the use of force.
Rivera was convicted of playing a leading part in the bombing of government and Wall Street targets during a 70s terror campaign against the U.S. presence in Puerto Rico. To many poor Puerto Ricans, and especially his niece Lourdes, he's a symbol of liberation.
Oscar's in prison basically for the struggle to free Puerto Rico. And he was the most wanted man by the FBI from 1976 to 81. The judge with Oscar said, "I wish I had the tools to justify a death penalty on you, but I will give you 55 years full-term serving."
A later conviction for attempting to escape added 20 years to Rivera's sentence.
Oscar won't be released until the year 2046. He's not eligible for parole.
The Administrative Maximum Facility, the ADX, has been opened approximately 7 months. We received inmates in November, and we have 247 inmates presently in the institution.
Prison is very inhumane, is very dehumanizing. But when you are in a controlled environment, then you begin to experience the barbarity of prison. To sear and to burn your spirit, to take away your humanity. Here, everything is cement and steel. You cannot smell the earth. You cannot see a blade of grass. You cannot see a tree. How can you correct an individual by placing that individual in a cell for 22, 23 hours a day?
Despite his crimes, Rivera speaks about control unit prisons with all the insight of a human being condemned to live in one.
Toma. Ensalada.
You can no longer be creative because you are constantly in one single spot in a 7 by 9 feet cell. You become totally dependent on the jailer, on the staff. You cannot even say, well, I'm going to go and reach for food is given to you. In the same environment, you do everything. You defecate because you got your toilet there. You take your food in the same place. So that begins to also rob you of your humanity and strip you of your humanity.
The security procedures and designs here are specifically for the maximum security inmates. Everything that an inmate would need is enclosed within that inmate cell. Showers, toilet facilities, things of that nature.
To prevent weapon manufacturing, cell furniture is made of poured concrete. Windows are angled to prevent prisoners seeing the mountains outside. The cell is escape-proof, but at a price.
When I saw Oscar, he had already been 2 weeks in this lockdown, in this hermetically sealed doors, with no ventilation, no sunlight, and there was someone who had been medically diagnosed as insane at Marion. And this man with 2 steel doors, hermetically sealed, Oscar could hear him hitting the wall. He could hear him screaming. He could hear him yelling for help in this cell.
A civilized society may ask itself whether control unit prisons like Florence and Westville are just tombs for the living dead.
I was strip searched in the cell. I was strip searched in the visiting room by the same people who had strip searched me, who had been holding me and watching me all the way down to the visiting room. Once the visit was over, I was strip searched again in the visiting room, and I was strip searched again in the cell.
And we were going to be seeing each other in a 2.5-inch fiberglass sealed wall between us on a phone. Why would a human being strip another human being and poke? Because they poked Oscar to see if he would. What the hell was he going to carry from his cell to the visiting room?
A spokesman said ADX policy is to strip search a prisoner once on leaving a housing unit and once on his return.
Contraband materials can be passed between inmates and visitors, and this is to ensure that that does not take place.
The first time I saw my granddaughter, she was probably 5 months old. Nothing would have been greater than to be able to touch her, to grab her out. My daughter would put her on the window so I could, and she would almost try to reach at that early age. When she touched the glass, all the features in her face changed because she was expecting to talk to me and touch me, and so the glass prevented that. And it was to look at her face. It was a very horrifying experience. One that was extremely sad, and one that was extremely, where you almost break down in tears and you choke.
Today I went for my visit with Oscar with his granddaughter, who he had not seen in 2.5 years. And that urgency of helplessness got lost when Karina said, I can feel you. There was no glass anymore. Even what the government thought they can break us by, that glass, and seeing that 4-year-old girl play, and she played for the 45 minutes we had the visit. She played, and they played, and there was no pain in that glass. There was joy, so we broke the glass.
When you take a person and put him in a setting where you dehumanize him, I don't want that person as my neighbor when he gets out, and I'm a convict sitting in this place. The only thing that stops me from being dehumanized is myself.
If these prisoners here was to go down and go through the reception center in the state of Florida, when they brought them back and let them off the bus, they'd look like hostages coming back to the United States. They would run up and hug the prison. They'd be so happy to be back here.
This place doesn't change people. I mean, initially I think it was meant to be a type of psychological reconditioning, make the place so terrible that you would never want to come back. Essentially, this place is just a warehousing facility, in my opinion. 10 years, they're going to look back and say, we have 2 million people in prison and nothing's changed.
This education thing is one of the best things that they got here because, you know, like, you got a lot of people here that's slow in certain fields. They can better themselves here. That's what I'm doing. I'm bettering myself. And I'm damn near 50 years old, but you're never too old to learn. You know, never too old to learn.
People say prisons reform you. In my estimation, they really don't. What happens is you grow old, you're out of steam, you can't whip nobody, much less than the police. So the best thing is cool it. People laugh at me, says, boy, they shortchanged you. No, I grew up, got old. I was 59 years of age when I got out of Leavenworth after spending 35 years locked up, more than half of my life. And I just took it easy when I got out, and I got to working, and things got better and better, and I says, don't take no chances now. You got more to lose than you gain. Years before, I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. I was just gambling with life.
The Russian writer Fyodor Dostoevsky, author of Crime and Punishment, said, "The degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons." Today, the United States locks up more of its citizens than any other nation, except Russia. If prison really works as a cure for crime, this should be the safest country on earth.